Today's guest is Margaret M Kelly, COO of Dimension Admissions. We covered a lot in this conversation. The top line of it is the idea of AI in education. And the company Dimension Admissions actually helps students and parents prepare for getting into Ivy League schools. And we all know some of those really early age pressures we hear about preparing to get into these schools, because let's face it, they're not easy to get into. Some have even gone so far as to buy burial plots to secure the bag there. If you're interested in that and it's piquing your curiosity, you're going to want to listen to this conversation, especially what they plan to do as a company in terms of integrating AI, because it is controversial to use it to craft that perfect essay, quote unquote. So without further ado, Margaret M. Kelly. Okay. Super thrilled to have you here, Margaret. It is an absolute pleasure. It's not often I get to talk to somebody, not only that is doing great work in terms of education, but also happens to have a very, very clear idea of where AI is impacting at that intersection with education. So before we even go there, though, you have this huge diverse background in like law, entertainment, writing. How have all of these experiences sort of shaped your approach to admission strategy at AIT?
So I think admission strategy at our top colleges and universities is necessarily layered. We were originally called Advantage Ivy Tutoring, and we have changed our name to Dimension Admissions because we think that dimension is the most important aspect of an application. So the fact that I have this kind of wandering background is really helpful in terms of being able to talk to students who are interested in all kinds of things and direct them to the schools that we think will help them realize their big dreams.
Yeah, no. And so do I have it correct in understanding that where technology is right now, is it causing more problems than it's actually solving in education? In your opinion, of course.
So, we're kind of at a threshold here. We don't really know where we're going. There are as many AI doomsdayers out there as there are people celebrating what AI is going to bring to education, how it's going to democratize everything, and help kids learn from all corners. In terms of admissions, specifically Ivy League admissions, we think that the temptations of AI are pretty dangerous. And I mean, dangerous and if you want to get into a top school. So these bots kind of, if you read their essays at first glance, they seem pretty fluent, they seem pretty competent, well organized. But if you try to get beneath the substance of what they're writing, you start to realize that there are all kinds of patterns that they adhere to, because they're basically, the way these bots work is that they have these highly complex language models that they search to figure out how to churn out the next word in a sequence. So what they're writing sort of probabilistically makes sense, but it's by nature derivative. So you can't really, a bot can't write with feeling or heart, because it doesn't have one, but it also can't come up with an original idea. Like by definition, it can't come up with an original idea, and you need original ideas to be compelling to admissions departments, especially our most competitive ones. So we think that AI is fantastic and could open a lot of doors in a lot of other realms of education. But with respect to admissions, we think it's a really good idea for kids to lay off the bots.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another one of those things that's adding to the already controversial area that is Ivy League schools and the things that people have done to get in and to keep going, right? From celebrities and all the news that came out there. I mean, people literally do whatever it takes to get in. And from what you're telling me, the best way to be seen in the clearest light and to give yourself the best chance is to do it honestly and to do it with hard work and come from that place. And you're either ready for it or you're not. Was this what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent listening comprehension. We had a joke. I went to Andover, which is a boarding school in New England. And I'm sure this is no longer the case, but when I was at Andover, you could establish residency by just buying a burial plot. And schools do care about geographical diversity. So there was a joke going around Andover that we all needed to buy grave sites in North Dakota because we'd have a much better chance getting into schools. And I have read stories about people, moving across the country, like, hiring people at $1,500 an hour, like just all kinds of wild things to try to get their kids through the Ivy Gates. But the best advice we have is to be authentic, and whatever you say, mean it, because these admission readers can definitely tell who's real and who's not.
Yeah. So then why don't you, if you'd be so kind, sort of break down what you're doing with Advantage Ivy Tutoring, sort of what someone who, because what we have here, presumably who's listening, are entrepreneurs who are likely either well-to-do already or are on their way to do that, and will either already have kids and they're considering they want to give their kids the best opportunity possible, or they themselves are working on getting that, right? So they either already are or on the way. Where does Advantage Ivy Tutoring fit sort of in their ecosystem for their planning if they were to consider that?
Sure. So we're at Dimension Admissions now because we wanted
to say that.
To move away from while we do focus on getting kids into Ivy Plus schools, we care about more than just the Ivy brand. So we're always process first. We have a really holistic inquiry when it comes to vetting new clients, and we really care about brainstorming. We really care about sort of iterative drafting. So what we want is to help our clients craft a personal narrative, increase their self-awareness, increase their security, confidence, and their ability to write. So we're not just sort of ghostwriting. We're not at all ghostwriting application essays. We're instead teaching kids to write their own, and to write with feeling, and to understand why they're writing, what their values are, and where they want to go to school beyond just the rankings. So we really think that the process of applying has just as much to offer, is just as important as the product of the application. So if you want somebody to sort of swoop in and help your kid cut corners to get into an Ivy League school, that's definitely not us. But if you're interested in your child actually learning to write and learning what they care about, then come to us. We're happy to help.
Have you found that writing has impacted the way you operate in the world in general, since even before being a part of this admissions team?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, one of the most powerful things that we have to offer each other, something that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom, is language, and being able to communicate effectively and think with nuance and dimension, which requires sort of at least some baseline writing skills, is really important for making strides. So I think that having a brain that puts words together with more fluidity is helpful in terms of problem solving. It's helpful in terms of communicating interpersonally, and it's also helpful to get a message across, which I hope I'm doing here.
Yeah, no, and because my next question is, how early is too early to push a child to prepare for Ivy League schools? I mean, this is a conversation I don't get to have often, but there are definitely stories of like parents from like the day they're born are training their kids as if getting into the Ivy League school is the end in and of itself. What are your thoughts on that as you watch these letters come in and how people are trying to sort of present themselves to you, and what that looks like in terms of trajectory based on your experiences?
So I think that an Ivy League school is definitely not an end in and of itself. An Ivy League school is can help arm you for the world and what you care about doing in it. And it can be a great diving board. But yes, this sort of like obsessive neurotic idea that the only way to move forward in life is to get an Ivy League degree is ridiculous. We don't support it. I do think that these big schools have a lot to offer, and maybe measurably more schools in the top 20 might have measurably more to offer their students than schools in the top 100. But it really matters what you do with it. I mean, you can get to Princeton. Well, not really Princeton. Princeton makes everybody work. You could get to Harvard and decide that you don't want to do a whole lot. Still maybe graduate with decent grades, but you haven't engaged yourself in the process. You really need to dive into your curiosity, see where that takes you, because it's not just a stamp of approval. It's kind of an access hatch, and you got to use it.
What's it like being a COO and a partner at a company that focuses on education as you watch all this technology coming up, where it's trying to make it easier and easier for students to, quote unquote, find a place to start with their work when really they're just using it to write their work?
Right. So we were pretty freaked out about this in January. We spent a lot of time with these bots trying to see if we were going to be out of a job come fall. And we were pretty relieved to see that the bots are just not capable of generating writing that's competitive at certainly not the top 20 schools. But we do realize that we're going to need to figure out how to partner with AI going forward, because AI is here to stay. And I don't mean to undersell AI's language capacities. 3 British academics in March published an article in a pretty well-respected peer-reviewed journal about AI's influence on education. Journal picked it up and ran with it, and the essay was entirely generated by AI. And most people reading were completely fooled. So the bots are certainly proficient. They're just what they're not good at right now, and it's hard for us to imagine that they'll ever be great at, is capturing an individual, their idiosyncrasies, what makes them different. And you connect with a reader through your writing because there's a human that's writing. When you read a bot's essays, there's something that's not definable that's missing. There's no body heat. So while we definitely realize that we need to figure out how to integrate with AI in terms of teaching kids to write, we're not worried about AI taking our jobs by being a cheating device. Definitely not at the top schools. So we're grateful for that.
I wonder what it was like with the invention of the calculator. And I know you've seen the meme somewhere, but I do recall having teachers tell me you're not going to be able to use a calculator everywhere you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's pretty much exactly what we can do now. And now even more with AI. Do you think this is one of those moments, or is it even bigger than that?
I think it's probably bigger than the calculator. I've read all kinds of things that say it's, the biggest technological or maybe even just development period of the human race. So I think that but in terms of what it's capable of right now, it's maybe very akin to a calculator. Like I have GPT-4 on my phone, and I use it as a thesaurus. And sometimes I use it to do basic research, but not really, because it hallucinates information all the time. And it's so persuasive. Like if you don't fact check this thing, like you're going to believe whatever fabricated detail it just asserted with great confidence. So tricky as a research device, useful as a thesaurus, although not really as useful as other paid thesaurus apps that I prefer. So right now it's, really in its infancy as it develops. I mean, the bots are much better now than they were even 6 months ago in terms of what they're capable of generating. So we have no idea what the future holds, and these progressions tend to be logarithmic. So, it's kind of like, hang on, let's see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see why ChatGPT can't just say, I don't know, but here are some questions to ponder, like something along those lines. Anyone would be like, those are great questions, instead of, well, let me go in here with some confidence. And it's like, what are you talking about? No, hallucinations are really a problem. And I myself actually remember, I think it was ninth grade, like really early on, I wrote an essay starting an English class, and the teacher got up and asked me like, oh, did you write this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, really fascinating stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. And then later on in the year, as the year went on, I sort of got into a rebellious phase myself and thought, I'm just going to find something online. This is like 2003. But I found something online and I just turned it in thinking, none the wiser, they don't know. But he really understood the difference in my work and in contrast to what I just copied and pasted and thought I could turn in. And it was a valuable lesson for me because more than being angry at me and getting me in trouble, he just looked so disappointed in me for not putting in the effort. And I think that there's something to say to that. Right. In the spirit of sort of what it is that you're doing here, there is something. You don't want to cheat yourself, I think, is some of the notes I was looking at in terms of the spirit behind what you're doing. There really is something to be said about you putting in the effort, you being the one that crafted that. Right. Even if you have these tools and I'm getting to something here, I promise, not just waxing poetic. There's this like idea of like all these tools and what they're going to do for us in education and in everyday life. Honestly, school asks you to write a 14-page paper, but then every day in life, people want you to answer things in 5 minutes. Right. And it's like all these papers are training us to think extensively so that we can answer in 5 minutes. This is what I've learned from these are my feelings. But as somebody in this business, do you find that that's sort of the ultimate objective and that's why things are done, or are all these formalities sort of just the way things are for education?
So I definitely think that thinking about homework assignments, essays, certainly admissions essays, as something to just, you want to reach the finish line, that's not the way to think about it. Admissions essays specifically, but writing in general, these are distillations of lived experiences. So if you can't understand yourself, you're not going to be able to write about yourself. And it's just as important to understand yourself as it is to be able to write compellingly, but those things go hand in hand. So kids who are using AI to cheat are doing themselves an intrinsic disservice for sure, because they're not actually learning the material themselves and they're not actually engaging in the writing process themselves. They are losing out on an opportunity for self-awareness. Also, cheating does a number on your self-confidence, even if kids are not aware of it. And so sort of upholding your moral values at the same time as you undertake this journey to learn something, not just to produce something, is really important for academic and personal development. So we really believe in doing your own work. And the bots may be able to help more going forward, but outsourcing to the bots is a bad call if your goal is to have an actual education.
Could you imagine like the captain of a ship just going, yeah, let the bot handle it, and just like letting everyone.
Exactly.
Like, we have autopilot, but they're still looking at the instruments, making sure we're going to land okay on a plane. I think the spirit behind the company is great. I also love to see your stance on the technology and why you still encourage everyone to kick it old school and really just do the work, because that's going to help you in your development as a human being, as opposed to continuously relying more and more on external factors to determine your destiny, if you will. Right. I think there's a lot of heavy things being said there that should be taken into consideration. And if I were a parent, I would definitely rather choose a tutoring company that is looking at technology in that way and encouraging the actual benefit towards the human, if you will. And I can't even believe we're having this conversation, but it's really turning into that, like what's good for the humans world slowly. But it's already being seen. So I want to roll out the red carpet for you. What do you want the entrepreneurs to know, the entrepreneurs who might be parents, whoever that target demo is? What do you want them to know? And what do you want them to do? Like, what website do you want them to go to? What social channel do you want them to follow? Is there anything you want them to do in particular?
Yeah, so you can find us on the web at advantageivtutoring.com and also dimensionadmissions.com, which we are going to be shifting to full time. And you can check out our social media channels. I would like to mention that we just expanded to include 9 different school specific advisors and industry advisors that we're really excited about that represent schools across the Ivy Plus landscape. And we also really care about our pro bono arm. So we are partnered with Ukraine Global Scholars, which helps kids get out of Ukraine into top schools, and also City Squash in the Bronx, which helps kids in the Bronx get into great schools. So we care as much about our pro bono clients as we do our paying clients. We think that that's really kind of consistent with our ethos. So we aim to be an admissions consultancy with a heart. So if you like that, come find us. We'd love to talk to you.
Right on. Listen, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, breaking it down, sort of letting people know, like, we're looking out for this. We're thinking about this subject, and we're positioning ourselves to make sure we can assist you during this evolution of technology. For me, it's good to know somebody's there. So Margaret, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated this. This has been a great experience.